Hello everyone, I'm Nick Harrison. Today I'm going to be making a donut board, and if you're like me, you had no idea what that is. Call me disconnected or out of the loop, that's fine, I had no idea. But basically it's a board with a bunch of pegs on it that you hang donuts on, and it's designed to serve donuts at a wedding or an event. My wife has a friend that is getting married and wants a donut board, so that's what I'm going to be making today. First thing I'm going to do is take this scrap piece, it's about a half sheet of maple plywood, 3/4 of an inch, and cut it down to size. I'm going to do that on the table saw and then take that piece to the CNC, get it secured down to the bed of the CNC. Okay, now the whole purpose of using this board on the CNC is that I'm going to use 5/8 inch of a diameter dowels that will be the pegs that will hold the donuts. And what I'm going to use the CNC for is to precisely drill a hole out, a mortise, if you will, for the dowels to slide into. That will give the dowels some extra support rather than just nailing or screwing the dowels on by drilling through the back of this into the dowel. So I'm going to get my file set up for the CNC. I'm going to set the bit to the 0 point. And then we'll start this carve on the CNC to drill the holes out for the dowels. The next step is to cut down a whole bunch of pegs that will go on the donut board that the donuts will sit on. These pegs will fit inside of those holes that I carved out on the CNC. So what I have is the dowel rod here that I bought in like a 4-foot or 48-inch length, and I'm gonna cut them down to 4 inches each. I'm gonna do that on the miter saw. I do not have a stop block that can obviously come within 4 inches of the blade, so I set my stop block to 24 inches, and I have a 20-inch spacer. Once I slide that in, that'll give me 4 inches. So I'm gonna use my miter saw to cut these down to 4 inches each. All right, so now I have all of the pegs cut from the dowel rod, and I have the holes cut into the backer board that was done on the CNC. Couple things to do next. I'm going to work on starting my laser cutter and cutting out some text that is going to go at the top of this board that the person wanted that I'm giving this to. That I'm making this for. So I'm going to work on getting my laser cutter set up to cut out that text. While the laser's running, I'm going to come back and do some sanding on this board because the holes are cut, but as you can see, there's these little furry bits just from the router bit when it cut in. I need to sand that stuff off, get this stuff smoothed up, and we'll take it from there. So let's get started setting up the laser and sanding this down. Okay, we are now ready to start installing these pegs onto the board. I have everything sanded, the holes are all cleaned up, the pegs are cut. So these have a pretty good friction fit already. But what I'm going to do is just put a small dot of glue in each one and then just use a rubber mallet and kind of tap these in, and that'll be that. I think they're going to hold just fine even without glue, but the dabble glue will just ensure that all of them stay put exactly. Again, they're just holding donuts. They don't need to carry a lot of weight, but I do want it to be sufficient. So let's get installing 36 different pegs on this donut board. I'm now going to use my joiner to take some 2x4s and get rid of the rounded edges and make sure they're completely flat on two sides, and then rip them down at the table saw. The purpose of doing this is so that I can work on making a frame for the donut board, because I think it'll just look a little better than having the exposed plywood edges. The whole purpose in doing that, by installing that dado stack and cutting a rabbet on the corner of those braces, is so that it will seat nicely on the edge of the donut board. The donut board will kind of fit into that and cover up those exposed edges. So originally I was just going to nail or tack a frame onto the edge, but this will give it a little bit extra elaboration and classy elegance, if you will. Okay, so I have all of the rabbets cut in here to the edges of these boards. That way the donut board will sit neatly inside this frame. When I originally cut these to length, I overcut them. They were just rough estimates, rough measurements. So what I'm going to do now is I've swapped my dado stack on my table saw back out with a regular blade, and I have my Incra miter saw sled set up to a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to work on mitering these pieces at 45 degrees on each end so that it will be a mitered frame around the donut board. So I'm going to get everything cut up to as close to exact measurements as I can, and then we will work on actually affixing this and attaching it to the donut board itself. If you haven't done so already, make sure to like and subscribe down below. Okay, so after the stain dried on the donut board, I then applied 2 coats of spray lacquer. That has now dried. I have all of the paint dry on my lettering for the text that's going to go across the top, and I'm going to use some Starbond medium clear CA glue to affix these letters to the board. This, as well as every other product and tool that I have used on this project, will be available for you to view, and I'll put those in links down in the description. So let's get these letters glued onto the donut board. All right, so you saw me painting a frame that I made for this thing. And what I did was I just made this design of the frame on my CNC machine, cut it out, added some braces. I just glued and brad nailed those together. After the glue dried, I painted it. Now that's dry, and I added this French cleat on the bottom of the donut, or on the back of the donut board, and then that will seat on this French cleat, which is on the frame. So right now I'm working on heating up my branding iron, and once that gets done, I'm gonna stamp the back of this thing and this thing will be done. All right guys, and with that, this donut board is now complete. I know the camera shows this a little dark, and it is kind of dark. There's not a whole lot of contrast between the black letters and the dark stain, but there is enough in person, not necessarily visible on the camera, that I think it turned out pretty good. So even though this is lacquer, it's all hardened. Look, I guess one could argue that you're gonna be eating something off of this. I personally don't think it's an issue because the wedding's not for a couple months from now, and I think this will be just fine for donuts to be on it and for them to be taken off. So these pegs do stick out about 4 inches, 3.5, 4 inches, but there's gonna be 2 donuts on each peg based on the RSVP from the bride's guest list. They wanted 72 donuts. So there's 36 pegs, 2 donuts on each pegs. I think it'll turn out nice. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, be sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed so you don't miss out on future videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.